Baelor Targaryen. Born the eldest son of King Daeron II and Maria Martell, Baelor's Dornish heritage gave him dark features that made him look less like a dragon prince and more like a common man. He earned the legendary name Breakspear when he was just 17, after absolutely dominating a wedding tourney where he unhorsed challenger who faced him. But his greatest moment came when he ended the First Blackfire Rebellion. At the Battle of the Redgrass Field, Baelor led an army of Dornishmen and Stormlanders straight into the rebel rear, while his brother Maekar held the front lines. This hammer and anvil strategy, backed up by Bloodraven's deadly arrows, crushed the Blackfire threat and saved the throne. By the time he showed up at Ashford, he was Hand of the King and the most respected man in all of Westeros. Baelor stepped into the Trial of Seven because he saw what was really happening. If nobody stood up for Dunk, the law would just become another weapon for his nephew Aerion's twisted cruelty. During the brutal chaos of the melee, his brother Maekar got frustrated with Duncan bashing Aerion badly and lost his cool in that dangerous way fathers do. In a moment of pure rage, Maekar swung his heavy mace, which accidentally caught the back of Baelor's head, crushing straight through the steel helmet. Somehow Baelor stayed on his feet and finished the trial, but once the adrenaline wore off and he pulled his helmet free, he collapsed and died right there. Maekar had to live with the devastating truth that his temper had accidentally killed the greatest king Westeros would never get to have. Lyonel Baratheon. Born the heir to Storm's End, Lyonel Baratheon was basically the perfect example of what House Baratheon's fury was all about. Long before he became a lord, he was already a legend in the tourney world, famous for his massive size and a fighting style that was honestly kind of crazy. He earned his nickname, the Laughing Storm, because he had this weird habit of bursting into booming laughter the second an opponent managed to land a hit on him. Basically, he fought because he genuinely loved it. He would often throw away his own shield or sword right in the middle of a fight just so he could wrestle his opponents to the ground with his bare hands, talking trash the whole time as he pinned them into the dirt. Lyonel was the very first person to step forward for Dunk at Ashford. During the trial, you could hear him laughing the entire time while the battle raged around him. While other men were screaming in pain, Lyonel was roaring with pure joy as he smashed through the accuser's line. Raymun and Stefan Fossoway. Before the events at Ashford, House Fossoway was one of the most respected and ancient families in the Reach. Their seat, Cider Hall, sits where the Cockleshent meets the Mander, and their history goes all the way back to the Age of Heroes. Legend says they were founded by Foss the Archer, supposedly a son of Garth Greenhand. For centuries, the Red Apple stood for fertility, wealth, and total loyalty to the Tyrells and the Crown. They were a house known for sticking together, famous for their huge orchards and their powerful knights. The story of the Fossoway cousins is probably the most realistic human drama of the entire trial, going from a story about family unity to creating a split that would last forever. Sir Stefan Fossoway, the heir to Cider Hall, was a knight of the Red Apple branch. He looked like the perfect example of a polished, high-born warrior who initially promised to fight for Dunk. He spent the days before the trial actually training the young hedge knight, acting like a mentor and friend. However, Stefan's honor didn't mean much when it came down to it. When Prince Aerion offered him a lordship if he switched sides, Stefan didn't even hesitate. He abandoned the man he'd been calling a friend and joined the royal accusers instead. Standing in the shadow of this betrayal was his cousin and squire, Raymun Fossoway. Completely disgusted by what Stefan did, Raymun realized that if he followed his cousin, his own name would be ruined forever. Raymun declared he would rather be a green apple than a rotten red one. Since only a knight could fight in a trial, Sir Lyonel Baratheon knighted Raymun right there on the spot. After the trial ended, the split became official. Raymun founded House Fossoway of New Barrel, taking the green apple as his sigil to show he wasn't ripe enough yet to fall into the corruption of the main branch. From that day forward, the two houses stayed bitter enemies. Aerion Targaryen. If Baelor represented the best of the Targaryens, Aerion was everything that could go wrong with the Targaryen bloodline, all wrapped up in one person. The second son of Prince Maekar Targaryen and Diana Dane, he was born with the classic Valyrian beauty, silver gold hair and violet eyes. Aerion genuinely believed he was a dragon in human form, which was a delusion that fueled his monstrous cruelty. His entire life was defined by a terrifying mix of vanity and sadism. His vanity was so extreme that he renamed himself Brightflame, and decorated his armor with an enameled three-headed dragon in shifting colors of orange, yellow, and red. At Ashford, his cruelty was the reason the entire tragedy happened in the first place. He viewed the small folk as nothing more than insects that deserved to be crushed. His madness eventually reached its peak years later when he screamed in triumph and drank an entire cup of liquid wildfire. He expected to be transformed into a dragon made of living flame. Instead, he died screaming in absolute agony as the substance burned him alive from the inside out. Humphrey Hardyng. Sir Humphrey Hardyng was basically the ultimate superstar of the tourney circuit, a man who lived and breathed jousting. Coming from a minor house in the Vale, he became famous through pure athletic dominance, most notably winning the Great Melee at Maidenpool. To common people, he was a celebrity in shining armor, but his actual life was one of constant travel and high stakes, moving from castle to castle, winning prize money that funded his entire lifestyle. He was the brother-in-law to Humphrey Beesbury. During the battle, Hardyng's leg got completely shattered when his horse collapsed under him. Despite the excruciating injury, he refused to give up, eventually dying from the trauma and internal bleeding shortly after the trial was won. Humphrey Beesbury. A seasoned veteran from the Reach, Sir Humphrey Beesbury represented the old generation of knights and their code of honor. His house was famous for its honey production and its fierce loyalty, and Beesbury lived up to that reputation perfectly. Before the trial, Sir Humphrey Beesbury and Sir Humphrey Hardyng famously faced each other in the tourney, breaking 12 lances in what everyone considered the best-fought joust of the day, an encounter the common folk started calling the Battle of the Humphreys. Though Hardyng won that match, it cemented their mutual respect for each other. Beesbury was a landed knight who had a comfortable life and a respectable name to lose. Yet he entered the meadow anyway to act as a protector, standing as the shield for his younger brother-in-law. During the trial, Beesbury met a brutal end at the hands of the Kingsguard. He was killed by a single, crushing blow from the morning star of Sir Donal of the Vale, dying instantly on the bloody grass of Ashford Meadow. Rhysling. Sir Rhysling was a veteran graybeard whose life proved he just refused to give up no matter what happened to him. Years before Ashford, Robin lost an eye in a tourney melee, an injury that would have made most men retire completely. Instead, he adapted his entire fighting style to work with his limited vision, proving that a knight's real value comes from his toughness rather than being perfect. He joined Dunk because he understood what it felt like to be looked down on by the high-born. During the trial, his decades of experience let him survive the bloodbath, holding his own against some of the realm's finest fighters. Maekar Targaryen. The fourth son of King Daeron II, Maekar Targaryen was the anvil to his brother Baelor's breakspear. This title came from the first Blackfire Rebellion at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. While Baelor led the hammer with the Dornish and Stormlands charging in, Maekar held the center with an unbreakable defensive line, acting as the anvil that crushed the rebel forces between them. Though he deeply loved and respected Baelor, Maekar lived a life defined by the quiet resentment of always being in his brother's shadow. He was a seasoned commander who did all the hard work, yet he felt like the realm gave all the glory to his more charismatic brother. This feeling of not getting recognition turned him into a prickly, defensive father. At Ashford, Maekar was a man completely trapped by duty. He entered the Trial of Seven to defend the honor of his son Aerion, even though he knew Aerion was a monster. His blinding rage on the battlefield resulted in him accidentally killing the only man he truly admired. He walked away from the meadow as a kinslayer in the eyes of the gods, a guilt that would haunt his eventual joyless reign as king in the future. His reign was marked by a grim, never-ending devotion to duty. 3 Kingsguard. The 3 Kingsguard were the gold standard of what Westerosi fighters could achieve. Sir Roland Crakehall came from a family line of boars, men known for being unusually large and powerful. In later history, his descendant would be the one to discover Jaime Lannister standing over the Mad King's dead body. Roland was the veteran muscle of the group, a man who had survived the first Blackfire Rebellion and seen the deadliest combat the realm had to offer. Sir Donal of the Vale represented the mountain-hardened nobility of the Eyrie. Finally, Sir Willem Wilde was a master of the long game. The Wilds of the Rainwood were known for their persistence, and Willem brought that relentless, grinding fighting style to the meadow. What makes their backstory so tragic is that they were actually Baelor Breakspear's sworn protectors. Normally, they would be dying to save him. Instead, because of the rigid rules of the trial and the fact that Maekar Maekar and his sons were the accusers, these three were legally forced to stand against the very prince they were sworn to protect and love, while being forced to shield the prince. This internal conflict is what George R.R. Martin does best. Prince Daeron Targaryen. The eldest son of Maekar, Daeron was a man stuck with an ability he desperately wished he didn't have. Unlike his cruel brother Aerion, Daeron wasn't malicious or power-hungry. He was just terrified. He possessed the dragon dreams, prophetic visions that haunted his family line, and he used wine to numb himself against the terrible things he could see in the future. He was rarely seen without wine in his hand, preferring the blurred peace of being drunk to dealing with the terrifying weight of dreams. During the trial, Daeron was a pathetic figure. He fell from his horse almost immediately and just lay there in the dirt, making zero effort to get up or even swing his sword once. He was a prince who had stopped caring about how people saw him years before this moment, all to escape the dead dragon he kept seeing in his dreams. His end was as unglamorous as his life. Years after Ashford, he died from a pox he caught from a prostitute. It was a lonely, quiet death, leaving his daughter Vaela, a sweet girl with a simple mind, as the last person in his line.